Good afternoon. My name is Ray Van Iderson. I lead marketing strategy at the Postal Service and really want to thank you for taking the time to join us here today. At the Postal Service, we have a mission to bind the nation together through communication and commerce. And part of that mission is to work on education and making sure that information flows to everybody. For communication in recent years, Omnichannel has become key in terms of digital and analog communication working together. And in more recent years, AI has become a key element of that communication. So what we wanted to do today was to really have a conversation about some of the leading developments in how AI is driving performance in terms of communication in all types of communication that you do. So as part of the Postal Service mission to do that, we've helped make possible a study by the Winterberry Group on delivering performance in the era of AI. And so today what we wanted to do was to first have a three-part conversation. First, Jonathan Margulies, managing partner at the Winterberry Group, will speak about what the research that he has just been doing. Then secondly, we're going to add in a couple of practitioners who deal with performance marketing and AI on a daily basis, and we'll have a roundtable discussion among the four of us. And then lastly, we'll open it up to Q&A to all of you. And so we'll deal with your questions as well. So if you have questions at any point during the webinar, please don't hesitate. Put them into the Q&A. If it's something that we can incorporate in the earlier parts, we'll do that. Otherwise, you'll be first in line for the questions that we'll have at the end. If we don't get to every question, we'll be in touch with you afterwards. Again, this webinar is being recorded so that you'll have a chance to share it with friends and colleagues and listen to it again if you so choose. So without further ado, Jonathan, take us away and tell us about the research.
Oh, thank you very much, Ray. Appreciate being here, and appreciate everyone joining us as well today. Give me a moment here, and I'm going to share slides that's going to take us through some of the content, which everyone should be seeing now. Great. So as Ray mentioned, my name is Jonathan Margulies. I'm a managing partner at Winterberry Group. By way of quick introduction, we're a strategy consulting firm based in New York, and we work exclusively across the disciplines of marketing, advertising, technology, data, and analytics. It's a bit of a mouthful, I grant you, but we stay very, very close to the kind of disruption that's happening in marketing circles, how that's impacting brands, publishers, and how that's impacting folks that are really across the entire marketing ecosystem. As you think about folks that live in the supply chain, that provide data to fuel marketing campaigns and the like. Many folks know us through our advisory work, but I would probably say far more know us through our published research. We've been keeping tabs on where disruption is happening in and around marketing ecosystem for the better part of 2 decades. And have tracked a lot of the more transformative developments in this world over that time as we think through the impact of technology, the proliferation of data, the emergence of new media channels, and a host of different innovations and considerations, some that have really proven meaningful and some somewhat less so. Part of our role is always to try to make heads or tails of exactly what's happening and how that's going to impact all sorts of folks in the future. For the last few years, we've been working with Ray and his team at the USPS to publish insights really tracking the evolution of the direct mail channel, and have advanced a series of research under the Delivering Performance banner. Got to get a sense of how the role of mail is changing and how brands are looking to tap into that channel along with many others to drive a wide range of change in their own business. One of the observations that we've been able to reach after many years of doing this is that when a certain development or innovation sort of reaches critical mass in marketing circles, you can kind of track just how much traction it's getting by the amount of infographics that that various folks, analysts like myself, for example, are putting to work to try to explain what's happening. We saw that happening years ago when multi-channel marketing became a theme that marketers were really hot to pursue. The idea of putting many channels to work in the service of their marketing objectives. We saw it a few years later around the emergence of big data, the notion that information was proliferating from many different sources, online as well as offline, and it was incumbent on brands to put it to work. We're seeing it today in and around the discipline of AI, and with the understanding again being that technology is advancing at such a pace and coming to support just so diverse an array of use cases that the stakes are growing higher than ever before, and it's incumbent on marketers to get a handle around exactly what the technology can do and exactly what the technology can't do. One of the things we've realized both is thinking through the impact of AI within individual channels like direct mail, and as a general force, a platform to drive transformation of marketing in all different ways, is that often in these cases, even though the technology presents a lot of promise, it presents more questions than definitive answers, certainly when it's in its formative stages. And as we've been thinking about exactly how to tackle this in the context of our Delivering Performance series, those questions over the last 12 months or so have really taken on a very defined form to them. How is the technology different than that which came before? What is it actually doing in practice today that allows marketers to achieve results that were previously not possible? Is AI something that should represent a net opportunity and a target for investment, or is it something that is actually going to be more disruptive to brands as they think about their work and their prospects to advance what they're aiming to do? And maybe most importantly, if AI is something that does offer transformative to the positive opportunity, how do we lean into it? How do we optimize for it? How do we plan? How do we strategize? How do we make it part of our business as usual? So with those as sort of North Stars, as questions that we're still wrestling with, and that we hear folks from the brand community, from the marketing supplier community asking us about, we sought out to understand a little bit more around how AI is working in practice, both specifically with respect to direct mail and other, if you will, performance-oriented channels, but more broadly as we think about the technology and the tools that brands are going to need to leverage in the future. We published our results in a white paper a couple of weeks ago. That white paper is available for free download, and I'll present a link later on that by which you can get access to the entire data set. But I'm going to spend a few minutes now reviewing a few of our high-level conclusions, which I think will frame nicely some of the conversation we'll have with practitioners later in this discussion. There is a lot that can be said, needless to say, about AI and its impact. So we won't have the time just in this introduction to review even all the findings of our research process. But needless to say, there's much that's going to keep practitioners busy for the next year, both untangling the technology and the potential of what it can do. The first conclusion of our research, as surfaced to us by our panel of over 250 brand marketers, is that at the end of the day, no matter what any specific tool set, data set can actually accomplish, one of the North Stars of AI implementation today is really being put to work to further what we see as a macro marketing trend that's been gathering steam for a number of years. And that is the pivot of brands to really embrace performance-oriented marketing objectives and use cases as the centerpiece of their effort. That is to say, to move their dollars, to move their strategic emphasis, their tactical efforts towards any kind of initiative that can support specific, defined, bottom line business objectives: customer acquisition, incremental sales, retail traffic, you name it. as opposed to more general sort of amorphous brand building, awareness oriented use cases. This has been gathering steam for a number of years. This is one of the key reasons we know that brands continue to invest in direct mail, in digital, and certain other marketing channels. And it's one that is increasingly driving how they engage with technology. And the reason is simple. Those bottom line objectives, the demand for accountability, the understanding that technology exists to both substantiate performance and help optimize it is very, very central to the marketer's job today. Perhaps not surprisingly, a vast majority of brands tell us that that they're putting greater emphasis, and in concert with that, more spending every year on performance-oriented efforts and the channels that that go along with them. It doesn't mean that awareness and branding is no longer important. In fact, for a lot of reasons, I think it can make the argument that those kind of use cases are developing their own performance addressability as well. But it does change the direction, the strategic priority of the marketer, and it certainly does crystallize what they're looking for in terms of tools and solutions to support their work. Part and parcel to that, the understanding in marketing circles is growing increasingly that performance isn't an objective that any one marketing channel can accomplish in a silo. And as a matter of fact, just as the distinctions between awareness and performance are beginning to dissolve as technology proves itself addressable to all sorts of different media channels, what marketers tell us is that increasingly they expect most of the marketing channels in their mix to play a role in supporting their performance aims and to be able to substantiate the kind of incrementality they deliver. More and more, though, as our research over the last few years has sort of borne out, there's essentially a core 4 channels of sorts that are really playing a disproportionate role in these performance efforts. Online display advertising, paid social media, direct mail, and paid search are sort of the bedrocks of this performance initiative and what marketers rely on to help support their business needs. And they tell us that that's specific in an individual channel context, and they tell us that really leaning into those performance outcomes is important as they think about how they're going to be leveraging all of these channels on an ongoing basis into the future. Ultimately, the objective isn't necessarily to spend more or spend less in any one channel, so much as it is to really optimize what they're able to accomplish by way of that customer acquisition or those incremental sales, and use all the tools at their disposal to do so. AI, however you define it, as a generative tool, as an agentic tool, as a basket of technology that's simply disruptive, is beginning to play a real central role in helping support not just incremental performance, but to support the performanceification, if you will, of all those channels at disposal. There are a lot of reasons why. What it's also doing, perhaps counterintuitively, is it's actively changing the role and the impact of certain channels, certain media that have been sort of core to how performance has been practiced for several years leading up to now. Right now, for example, we're seeing, and perhaps many of you have experienced this, a tremendous amount of disruption in digital circles where AI, or at least in this case, the advent of AI-driven overviews that are now in many cases presented as a default search output, is actually disrupting the ability of companies to generate digital traffic, leveraging the same paid tools that they've been familiar with and they've been comfortable using for a number of years right now. That has effectively, in many cases, marginalized their ability to rely on these tools to generate the kind of scale, the kind of clicks, the kind of purchase behavior that those particular media channels have been associated with over the last few years. What it's also done in concert, unintended consequence, but perhaps a positive consequence nonetheless, is it's really crystallized the priority of brands to begin building out long-term infrastructure, long-term media mix that's focused on really using every available channel, whether it's digital or traditional, whether we think of it as paid or owned, in sort of an orchestrated mix to with AI as an underlying infrastructure to help optimize their ability to support those performance use cases that are core to their business needs and core to their objectives. And when we asked our panel to really talk more about what AI was going to do for them, they said, well, in short, it can do a great many things, but what we need the technology to do, if it's going to help us be more efficient, if it help us going to be more effective, it's going to help streamline, standardize, and optimize our performance in ways that are specific to our business needs and move past sort of the first generation challenges that we're seeing onboarding and sorting out the role of different technology. Not surprisingly, as they sort of wrestle with both those first generation challenges and think more around what the long-term future holds for the technology and its roles, brands are beginning to make substantial progress up the maturity curve, both in terms of understanding what AI technology can do, and then leveraging these tools to generate real and meaningful impact. Once again, across all those use cases that are important to them in their marketing efforts. I think some of the most important sort of black and white data that came out of our research effort is really represented by way of that maturity evolution. First and foremost, of course, being that brands, perhaps for the first time since we've been asking questions along these lines over the last 3 years or so, are reporting that they're generating meaningful business performance, both in terms of effectiveness, that is to say, how much they're selling, how many new customers are coming into their funnel, how much traffic they're able to generate, but also in terms of efficiency, which is to say, how much waste they're able to remove, how fast they're able to stand up campaigns and cycles, et cetera, et cetera. When we've asked questions like this in the past, what we also often heard from brands was that they're optimistic about the future of AI, but that they hadn't yet been able to leverage the technology to generate meaningful returns, particularly at scale and particularly across both effectiveness and efficiency levers. That's changing. It's changing across media channels. It's changing in a particularly pronounced way within individual channels like direct mail that are well established, where there's perhaps a pretty clear North Star for how the media is used and how people can put it to best effect. But where there's also, I think, a tremendous amount of opportunity to drive innovation and better harmonize the effort along with how other media are deployed. And once again, with sort of an eye on supporting effectiveness and efficiency. Our panel told us that that's happening today, that's happening in widespread respect, and there's a tremendous optimism in a sense that they're going to continue to leverage those kind of initiatives in the foreseeable future. One of the along the same lines, one of the most sort of like startling findings from the research for us was just how much pure incremental value, that is to say, additive value that marketers can attribute directly to their deployment of new agentic and generative tools is actually being realized today. We do a lot of surveying on a lot of topics in marketing circles here. It's very, very rare to see 93–94% of a panel agree with anything. But in this case, 93+% of folks are telling us they're seeing incremental value through the AI deployment to direct mail. It means something real is very, very happening. And it's happening across a lot of different disciplines. It's happening by way of better targeting. It's happening by way of creative optimization. It's happening because brands are helping streamline cumbersome workflows and clean up organizational processes, harmonize efforts with other channels, a host of different ways. There is as yet no, if you will, killer app, no single application that AI is proving uniquely adept at solving for in a way that no other technology can address. Instead, brands are saying that this is technology because it offers so much that can do a great many things. If there was, though, a discipline that did sort of represent the lion's share of the focus and attention in these early days of adoption, it's probably around the discipline of data, leveraging the technology to better wrangle the voluminous array of audience data that is available, becoming available on a regular basis, both from more traditional terrestrial sources and is generated from behavioral indicators online and things of that nature. It's being leveraged to support measurement and attribution use cases. It's being leveraged to help improve data quality, segmentation, and do a lot of other things that are not particularly new as we think about how direct mail programs are built, constituted, and deployed, limited as well as large scale. But it's helping move these processes along substantially faster with greater granularity and with greater accuracy, quality levels that once again, you kind of see naturally help support both effectiveness and efficiency outcomes that really do move the needle in meaningful ways for brands of all shapes and sizes. That movement up the maturity curve, that like substantial advancement from an era of experimentation to one where we're actually leveraging this technology as sort of a business as usual in flight resource is really, really important. And it's important as well because it kind of speaks to what the long-term pivot in performance circles is, the long-term role of the technology happens to be. And that is the ability of brands to leverage these tools as a mechanism to help essentially bring media together, to realize the opportunity sort of inherent in omni-channel marketing. That is to say, the orchestration of many different media channels, the deployment of different sources of audience data, so that programs can be optimized, audiences can be engaged with truly the right message at the right time to the right audience member, and that business results can be optimized not just for the brand itself, but so in service of delivering a better experience to the customer. And so when we asked our panel, like, are you bullish on that? Do you see that that effectiveness, that efficiency, that harmonization, that optimization as something that is going to continue to pace your priorities and drive the way you allocate budgets and resources internally? The answer to that was pretty resounding. There's a wide level of expectation that those improvements are coming, that more use cases are growing addressable to AI in the future, and that for many brands, that continued sort of march up the maturity curve, from a world where we were just a few years ago, where brands were really thinking about AI as a tool to take out some costly workflow issues or avoid certain workarounds in their process, eliminate duplicative manual effort and the like, to a world where we were focused on sort of a set of narrow creative optimization, to where we are today, which is really all about putting data to work and empowering how it's used. So many brands now have in their line of sight a future where AI is used as a tool to really drive omni-channel orchestration, right? To better put to work many channels, both paid and owned, in the service of delivering better experiences, more impactful offers, and ultimately helping optimize how marketing dollars are spent and how marketing experiences are realized and valued by customer audiences. There is a great deal more content in our paper, which, as I mentioned before, you're welcome to come and download when it's convenient. There's much as well to discuss with our panel over the next few minutes from these themes and many others. And so I am going to pause at the moment and turn the microphone back to my friend Ray, and I think we're going to have a good conversation around so many of these.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was incredibly interesting, and I can't wait to have the opportunity to really dive into it more. Now, what I'd love to do is to add a couple more folks to this conversation. Feel honored to introduce Brad Kugler, who's the CEO of Direct Mail 2.0, and Brett Fox, the VP of Marketing for Postpilot, who are, as you said, the people who are dealing with this on an everyday basis. And so just to get things going, Brad, could you start by introducing yourself and telling us about your relationship with AI? And then Brett, if you could please follow up afterwards.
Sure thing. Thanks, Ray. Happy to be here. I don't know if it was intended, but okay. You were sharing your screen still. I'm Brad Kugler. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Direct Mail 2.0. We have 3 platforms that enhance direct mail. Direct Mail 2.0, which is our legacy platform. whosmailingwhat.com, which is a competitive intelligence platform where we pick up thousands and thousands of pieces of direct mail and share that information with advertisers and direct mail agencies and manufacturers. And then our latest is direct mail dm2.ai, where we actually take the data from both platforms and we've built a propensity model to predict how your mail will do based on past results. And we just launched that this past spring out of beta, and it's very exciting what we can do. We're learning a lot. That we are not Sam Altman here, but we're doing what we can. So happy to talk about that, but that's what we do.
Great.
Brett?
Yeah, nice to meet you all. I'm Brett Fox, VP of Marketing over at Postpilot. A little background on me. My job is more than just marketing. It's really on the go-to-market and operations side. So I spend most of my day working with AI tools and figuring out how to implement them in our own business, as well as selling a product that layers on top of AI. So it's very much just the ins and outs of my day. My background is demand gen and performance marketing. So I've spent a lot of my days in Meta ads and LinkedIn ads and all those different channels, kind of dealing with the same challenges other folks have. And one of the reasons I ended up here at Postpilot is the value is just very clear and obvious to me as we continue to run into a commoditized digital world with AI. Physical is becoming more and more important, more and more valuable as AI continues to commoditize digital. So I think that there's a really great opportunity for physical to bridge that gap and ultimately create unique experiences with direct mail specifically. On the Postpilot side, like I mentioned, we do have some AI products. Acquisition AI launched earlier this year. That is intelligent targeting based on your brand's customers and who's bought from you and the most recent purchasers and site visitors in order to target your best new and future and previous customers. And in addition to that, benchmark recommendations with AI. So it's sort of similar to what Brad mentioned, but looking at benchmarks from folks in your space and creating recommendations for your campaigns to ultimately optimize those over time.
Thank you both. So let's get things going. Jonathan, one of the things that I was impressed by or influenced by when I saw your research, we're saying 71% of respondents have increased their use of performance marketing in recent years. With the AI boom, do you think that that's going to accelerate or slow that? And where would that shift come from?
I do, and I guess this is a bit of a chicken or the egg question, right? You know, like do brands increase their focus on performance because AI allows them to do it, or do other folks inside the enterprise, let's say the CFO folks in the finance suite, folks in the CEO suite, essentially drive continued emphasis on performance because the understanding is that these kind of tools allow for measurement, optimization, and enhancements. They allow for accountability, right, in marketing investment that wasn't necessarily possible beforehand. I don't know that you need to have necessarily a black and white answer to that question to reach the same conclusion, which is that, hey, at the end of the day, if we have the tools that allow for better, faster, and over time more accurate optimization of how we're putting resources to work, we're going to lean into that. We're going to continue to do that work to help substantiate and concentrate on what works, and we're going to allow the marketer to be successful. I think the other interesting thing that this kind of technology does, and I want to be clear too, AI offers a great many things, not perfect technology, right? So much of what makes it unique from predecessor tools is that learning capability, the ability of the tools to essentially learn from their own experience in a way that is traditionally, been part of human intelligence. But I think in this case, what the tools do is they allow all sorts of media and touch points that traditionally haven't been thought of as performance addressable or capable of driving that kind of performance to be accountable in all sorts of new ways. So long answer, but in short, yes, the ability to optimize for sure is going to have more enterprises looking to shift dollars towards those channels and those tools in the name of driving better performance. But it's also going to raise the bar for all sorts of other media channels to become accountable in their own ways. I wonder if we have this conversation 2 years down the road, whether we can see the clear-cut distinction between that which is performance and that which is maybe not so performance that we can still have today. It's a good question.
Perfect. Brad, for your own within your own company and your clients, are you seeing more of a shift to performance marketing with AI?
Absolutely. I think that those type of specifics it's easier to get more granularized now with AI. There's so many tools out there that can run instant modeling on who would be the best segments based on intent, based on browsing history, based on past responses to ads. This is something that was really only available to, say, maybe the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, because the data needed and the ability to sort of assemble it for use was really restricted to a much larger set of advertisers who had the resources. Whereas I think AI makes it more available to almost everyone. Even small businesses now, through some of the smaller AI tools, have an ability to segment and market directly to those who would be most interested. So I think it's becoming more widespread just because of the ease of use and the spread of the technology.
Makes sense. Brett, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I would second that. In our case in particular, it's allowed us to help build that prospecting engine. So direct mail, historically, people would look at these campaigns as one-off campaigns. You'd send a huge blast out to several 100,000 prospects, and you'd hope for a return. You'd wait 6 to 8 weeks to get that data back, and there'd be a lot of guessing involved. AI has helped us build out acquisition AI, as I mentioned before, which has ultimately allowed us to basically create kind of what you'd expect Meta to be, but for direct mail. So now you give us a daily budget. We go and find your best customers, and we optimize day after day or week after week based on how you set your budget in order to optimize towards those customers that are buying. So using holdout and incrementality reporting, we can see here's who's buying from you. Let's go find more people that look like that and improve that audience over time. So yeah, people are doing it. And I think, Brad, something you mentioned is, yeah, this used to be available to the Fortune 100. That was kind of Postpilot's mission to begin with, was helping make the direct mail process more accessible to smaller companies. So our founders came from the D2C space. They ultimately wanted to make that process a lot more simple. So that started with having a print facility and creating an account manager system to be able to make that process faster. But now it's turning into bringing in AI tools to help also push that to kind of the smaller companies so they can run more powerful campaigns. So yeah, I think that's exactly what we're trying to deliver. And I think that's what we've achieved so far.
Perfect. Thanks. The other key stat that really amazed me was, Jonathan, that the 93% of companies that you're seeing that are already receiving incremental value from it. I think a couple of years ago when we saw the stats, it was like, well, we're testing it, but the bleeding edge, it's not making money yet. What do you think the main shift has been that allows people to now be receiving value today?
I mean, there are at least three sort of core factors there. The first, of course, is just experience, trial and error. Much as we saw in sort of like past paradigm shifts in this world, right? Just like big data. When your CEO, your CMO, your CFO is barking at you to have a strategy to put big data to work, or in this case, put AI to work, the incentive is pretty strong to get out there and test and learn from those tests around where there's value to be realized and where there's perhaps more smoke than fire out there. And marketers are doing that. The second, I think Brett and Brad could speak to this far better than me, which is to say there's been a huge groundswell of investment and focus from the technology community, the supplier community, to stand up products and solutions that are AI centered, that are built on AI technology, but are focused on outcomes, focused on very specific applications, acquisition programs, better measurement and attribution, better coordination of targeted mail, let's say, in conjunction with digital targeting and the like, that are real easy for marketers to test, to stand up quickly and understand what works and what doesn't. And then finally, these tools themselves, and by tools I mean AI platforms, the LLMs, the ChatGPTs, the Claudes, the Perplexities of the world and the like, increasingly are serving as platforms for a lot of custom development inside brands. Businesses that are investing in the development of custom agents that lean on their own organizational resources, information, and otherwise to support highly defined use cases. We're still sort of early in the game, but virtually every enterprise that I know has been investing real money to go stand up their own systems that help support individual applications, and that's driving a higher level of sophistication, but also real world results that I think you see, represented in the survey feedback.
Okay. Brad, what are you guys seeing in there? There's that shift in performance and effectiveness?
It takes more time to get that data back. And I'll be honest, we're working a reseller model in terms of through our printers. I'm not privy to their exact ROAS because our customers will resell our product, mark it up, and we don't have a lot of direct communication with the clients, the advertisers. So I'm probably not a good one to answer that. I could only answer it through repeated mail or marketing. But again, that's not solid enough data. But let's put it this way. The things that we are doing cannot be hurting. Okay. At the worst case, maybe they're not dramatically effective, but they sure do not take away from the effective of mailing. If anything, it could only enhance it. Without doing any of it, worst case, you stay the same is just my logic-based response to that.
Absolutely. And Brett, what about your internal and client results?
Yeah, could you give me that question again? I just want to make sure that I interpreted what John said correctly.
Yeah, no. So a couple of years ago, when people were looking at what their returns were from AI, a lot of the early returns were, yeah, we're not making money on this. 93% of the people in the survey now say they are. So what's changed?
Yeah, no, I think the tools are getting better. And again, I'm working in these daily, and like you're constantly getting new models that come out. You're constantly finding people that are learning how to use these tools better, and companies are hiring folks to go work with these tools specifically to figure out how to improve their effectiveness in the company. It's again a lot of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's becoming familiar with this new, like in a way, new employee that you're working with and figuring out how to leverage it throughout the business most effectively, and the improvements of the models over time. So yeah, I think that totally resonates from an improvement and effectiveness perspective. And like I said, we're kind of dog fooding when it comes to that.
Makes sense. Yeah. So let's drill down just a little bit further. One of the key benefits that Jonathan was talking about was sort of the ability to use wrangle data and target more. Brett, can you talk a little bit more about exactly what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, what people are now able to do in terms of the targeting and how that's changing?
You said Brett, right?
Yeah, sorry.
The T.
Okay, sounds very similar.
Yeah.
I wondered too.
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to before with acquisition AI. So again, before people would be purchasing data sets from an outside company, and that company would go and try to curate some sort of audience to go be able to send to. now you have the ability to go use your own company's purchase data. So whether you're a Shopify brand or what have you, that data is available to you to go create audiences from that's going to be best built around your own set of performance. So you're now more in control than you've ever been. You don't have to rely on some outside party doing some analysis. You can go and get that feedback immediately. You can go build those audiences within a few minutes or maybe an hour with some back and forth. So again, with acquisition AI, in our case, it's always constantly trying to improve day after day. After you get a purchase, you're going to get that signal back into the system through Shopify or your platform. We'll receive that purchase. We'll see the AOV. We'll see the purchase value, and you'll be able to optimize towards that over time, just again, like you would with Meta or a different paid digital channel. And that's powered by AI. So I think that's kind of just the beginning of it. It's going to become more powerful and more predictive as you get more data. So I think that's maybe the takeaway I would have is be patient with it too. Like you're not going to necessarily launch and have unbelievable results right away. But launch, get some feedback, get some feedback, get some feedback, and those results are going to pile up over time with the help of the predictive analytics and AI.
And Jonathan, with that improvement in the ability to target, are you seeing any changes in terms of how companies are using different channels or are approaching omni-channel in a different way?
Well, they're thinking about omnichannel as something that's more than theoretical. I think that's the biggest change in the environment right now. And if you ask about how it's actually being operationalized on a regular basis, orchestration is a word we use a lot, right? We use a lot to describe more something that is still more vision than reality. The end goal essentially being, hey, can I maintain close to real-time visibility into how our channels are performing, how we're load balancing our dollars and our efforts across all these audiences, across all these channels, and then optimize as close to real time as we possibly be, so that we hit the right customers when they're in a position to make a purchase decision. We really optimize how we're putting our dollars to work. That's beginning to happen. It's beginning to happen, I think, first and foremost, rather than from an execution standpoint, from a measurement and attribution standpoint, right? The notion being that it sort of starts with understanding the incremental impact of each dollar of spend. And if we understand that, then we have the platform of intelligence to go and actually drive that next spend decision. And so we see that in the emergence of different attribution tools that are really focused on unified experience. We see a lot from the perspective of creative increasingly. And the goal for many brands to advance beyond sort of basic sort of first generation approaches to personalization or variation, the ability to test simple creative concepts A to B, towards a much more holistic approach built around creative intelligence. This is to say, if AI, like all these other things, allow us to develop deeper insight into how different media touch points, offers, creative performs, then we can optimize that. And so I think those two dimensions right now, the measurement and creative intelligence, are where we're seeing the most movement in terms of actually acting in an omni-channel way. There are all sorts of other orchestration opportunities, but I think that those are still a little bit down the road for most brands.
Yeah, I think when I've been talking to people, what I've been hearing is that, in many cases, if you don't know who your audience is, you have to, do spray and pray, just broad brand analysis, whatever may be the least expensive. And now when people are able to identify those, who are the true folks who are likely to respond, companies are able to really focus on that impact and targeting omni-channel messages right to that person because they know that that's where the value
is. Exactly it.
Yeah. Now, Brad, I know one of the things that you guys are really doing a lot with AI on is on the creative side. Can you talk a little bit about, how AI is helping you and your clients on really optimizing messaging and look and feel?
Yeah, so I know we've spent most of the time on targeting, and I want to focus a little bit on the creative side. Having access to over 500,000 pieces of creative across some 80,000 campaigns. We've actually tracked mail to 2 billion pieces of mail to almost, I think, every household in the United States. So what we've been able to do is digitize the creative and then correlate that to uh, engagement. So did certain aspects of the creative or the keywords or the text in that creative tend to lift the engagement, or was the engagement depressed at a bench line? So we think that's invaluable to helping people drive and create better creative. So combining the targeting aspect, which is also key, to the creative aspects of what actually caused people to engage. Again, I don't necessarily know the ROI, but I know if they engaged. Did they go to a website? Did they click? Did they scan a QR code? That's telling data. And we have that across 160 verticals. So essentially what we've done is we've made buckets based on vertical, geography, type of mailing, and we're able to regurgitate that in recommendation form to the person prior to launching his campaign. So before he drops 5, 10, $15,000, well, run it through this. Let's see what you're planning to send and who you're going to send it to and when. Timing is key too. And is there anything that can be done to increase that engagement rate by 1%? So you open that engagement rate by even 1 or 2%, that affects the ROAS or the ROI to an exponential degree down the line. So I'm looking for micro improvements here. And again, this is something we've just been doing for the last 60 days in a commercial basis beyond a beta form. So I like to repeat what I've heard many times. The AI that we have right now is the worst AI it will ever be. So
Right.
as these data sets get bigger and their learning and training sets get larger and iterate more quickly, this only proves to get better. Is it going to be an instant change between someone not making money on a campaign or, 10xing their ROI? I don't know. That may be a bit of a, a high expectation, but we will get incrementally better with every iteration and additional data used for training. So I look at this as an investment more long-term than an immediate ROI, And again, what are we charging to model a campaign? It could be as low as $20. So would you invest $20 before you're going to spend 5 or 10 grand just to get an idea if you're on the right track? I would. And that's why we think the value prop is pretty good here.
So before I ask my one last question, this is going to be our last question of the roundtable. We're about to throw it open to the Q&A. We've had a few questions already thrown in, but if you can send some more in, we'll be on your questions in just a minute. So my last question for the panel from me is that Jonathan's last slide was showing that maturity and was saying that the future is going to be the ability to orchestrate everything, both omni-channel together. So I'm going to say that, Brett, starting with you, if you were trying to prepare for the future, what should people be doing today so that they're ready to be able to really take advantage of the next generation of AI, as Brad was just talking about?
Yeah, well, first, I know you had question marks on that slide. I don't think it's that far away. Like I think it's going to be here before we know it. Which, Frank, again, as a performance marketer myself, like, it's exciting. But what I would be doing, and maybe what I am doing today, I think it's really important to be building out the foundational layer across your AI. And what I mean by that is your design system, your documentation about your products, all the things that need to be standardized across your marketing and across your business need to be stored somewhere, and they need to be maintained, and they need to be reflected on. I would spend time building that out. That way, as these programs progress and as these tools progress, you're going to have a source of truth to be able to have them derive from. Otherwise, these tools like to drift, they call it. So they'll start to pull from random sources and they'll make stuff up and they'll think they're doing a good job. But if you can be really critical and saying, no, refer to this documentation because it's been blessed, then you're going to end up having a really great foundation to be able to build from. So that's what I would spend the time doing, and frankly, exactly what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis in a lot of cases. So hopefully that's a helpful tip.
Okay. Brad, what do you think people should do to prep?
I think it's a great question, and I think Brett is on the right track, but I'll go one step further. It's the data layer that is the basis and foundation for all AI. And I see, if I'm looking 3 to 5 to 10 years down the line, you're going to have individual companies that have their data that must be standardized, normalized, and in a situation that can be open to AI. So then you have an application layer that may be a specific type of company that comes in and reads your data and basically puts it into use for a specific application. In that application layer, or maybe in between the application, the data layer, you'll have the LLMs, the big guys that we all know their names: Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini. Those guys will be the compute between the application output and your own data layer. So all of compute will be organized by a company's own proprietary data, the compute layer that will probably fall to the top 3 or 4 names that are pretty much in the news now, and then the infinite amount of application layers for specific uh, action items that you want to do. So if you're going to be a guy who's going to target creative, or you're a guy that's going to target specific types of segmentation, you'll contact those companies. They will then in turn use these large LLMs, and they will connect seamlessly to your data. So I would ensure that your data is either MCP alliant, which is what these large learning models use, and there's skills that will be connected through Claude or Codex. I believe there's going to be 3 layers: the data layer, the LLM layer, the compute layer, and then the application layer. And that's probably where things are going. So if you can organize your data layer and make it as normalized and accessible as possible, you're halfway there.
And Jonathan, what did the research say? What do you think that they should do to prep?
I mean, I agree with everything these guys have said right now. The one sort of overarching thing I think I'd add to it is bear in mind, like, no matter where you see yourself as sitting on the maturity curve, and no matter how ambitious you may want to be towards chasing down that long-term omnichannel orchestration, this is the holy grail. We're truly able to optimize across every dimension, every audience member, every media channel, every penny of our media spend, to optimize results, right? The technology can help do that faster, do it with greater accuracy, do it in a way that sort of learns from its experiences and even its mistakes to improve. But at the end of the day, those functions, you still need to be clear-eyed around the use cases, the media channels. What are you looking to accomplish? There's not going to be one single tool, one single solution that you plug in and the next day you're humming, right? It's still up to the brand at the end of the day to take a good black and white look at your resources, your channels, potential gaps in your current approach, and say, we need to think about sort of a phased approach and what's important to us to accomplish over time. And that's where we need to gear our effort. We've made so much progress as a marketing community, as a community of technology users over the last few years, but that hasn't come in one fell swoop. It's come based upon a series of phased initiatives and a whole lot of trial and error. And so I think the folks that will succeed are the folks that expect some of that trial and error, that are prepared to go about sort of the phased implementation, and are clear-eyed that the technology is going to serve to advance the use cases. The technology is not just going to be, a single solution in a nicely packaged box. If you're thinking about it that way, then it's much easier to understand the role for the data, for the creative, for the optimization, the application tools, and the like, and to put it to work for I think pretty substantial impact sooner rather than later.
Perfect. So speed round, we'll get to a couple of audience questions. First one is, each of the companies are now offering, multiple different variations in terms of the tools that they're offering. Which one? How should we approach trying to figure out which one should we be going with? Should we be going with, the fanciest one that just got released, or which may be using up lots of tokens, or should we be using some more a little lower at the end? Brett Fox, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're trying to achieve with it. And it like Claude is really good about kind of recommending or at least telling you here's what this specific one's for. So there's Sonnet, there's Opus, and the most recently, I'm forgetting the name. It was the part of the Mythic release. But my recommendation is you can tweak it based on if it's a low energy task, if it's something that's pretty simple, repeatable, use a lower model, use it to save some tokens. Now you are going to have a different output if you were to go apply it to a newer or more powerful model. So you have to know that there's going to be some changes. That being said, I'm not changing the model I do for every little thing. And like maybe we're not necessarily focusing on saving tokens. I think we're more so trying to figure out how to make all this work in the best way possible. So I would lean towards trying to be more consistent and predictable. But if you are cost conscious, then yeah, use a lower model and test that. And if you're not getting the outputs that you want, then yeah, try to scale it up and it'll cost a little bit more and you'll be a little bit less efficient from a tokens perspective, but you'll have a better output. So I think you have to play with it and see what makes most sense. But if you're doing a small writing task like Sonnet, for example, is probably fine and a lower version of it. But if you're doing something that's ingesting a ton of data or a larger exercise like that, then Opus 4.8, the most recent one on Opus, is probably a better fit. So yeah, you'll have to play with it and kind of find the right use cases.
Okay, so I'm just going to limit one question per person just so we can get through a few more. Brad Kugler, how should businesses responsibly draw the line between black box services and human in the loop as they move up the orchestration curve?
Wow, difficult one. I, and in the end, it comes down to cost and ROI. What are you paying for the black box versus what are you paying for a human, and what is it returning? So I think this is a trial and error thing. We're still relatively at the beginning of this adoption of this AI methodology. And I would say it's this trial and error, A/B test. If you want to do a automated targeting for new clients with a black box, and there's lots of them out there, it's almost overload every time I look on my screen, or you want to hire a couple of SDRs and have them bang the phones in the email and do it the old-fashioned way, I think you got to try both. I don't know that there's a clear decision in that. And not every AI black box is equal to the other AI black box. There's a lot of guys selling smoke and mirrors out there that throw the word AI on their black box that they've been using for 6 or 7 years, and they've added a little AI reporting. And I've seen a lot of that stuff going around too. So buyer beware. A lot of snake oil people out there, and they're trying to make a quick buck and ride this wave. That's what I found.
And last question to Jonathan. Jonathan, within your presentation, you showed that the number of clicks that people are getting out of their paid search is dropping through the floor because of AI. What should marketers do in response to that?
I mean, at the end of the day, you need to keep in mind you have one budget, you have one set of objectives. There may be some complexity to them. There may be multiple layers of them, but it's incumbent upon you to recognize that the market conditions are changing, and it's your obligation to optimize. AI can and ideally should, by virtue of its learning abilities, be a force for you to help reach decisions along those lines faster in ways that help you optimize. But don't take for granted the fact that that market conditions are set and they're always going to be that way. If we were having a conversation 3 or 4 years ago about threats to paid search as a source of digital traffic, people would have probably said we were insane, just given how the trajectory and the dollars were flowing into that media for the better part of 30 years already. And yet here we are today, and what we hear from brands over and over and over again is I need to rationalize. I need to take back more control over how I'm putting dollars to work to do all sorts of things from a marketing perspective. That's the responsibility. AI, as we're sort of defining it very, very generically here, can be a real force for helping you optimize and manage across a wide array of media. I think you should be doing that, but recognize that that landscape and the usefulness of tools along those lines is always going to be changing. And so managing them is now an active part of the marketer set of responsibilities, but it's an important one in most enterprises, and thus I think it's something that most brand managers, most marketing executives should embrace as part of their responsibility going forward.
Thank you all. And, I think you all deserve a round of applause. I apologize that you're not able to hear it from all of you out there, but really appreciate it, Jonathan, Brad, and Brett. Last thing I just wanted to do is to tell you, the audience, if you enjoyed this, we're going to have another webinar in a couple of weeks. This next one is a little bit different. This is about how to prepare for the upcoming holiday season. We're going to be talking about impact and how you can use Omnichannel for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. We're going to be talking about updates in the mailing promotions, including a discount for new mailers that we're launching next year. Come and join us on Friday, June the 26th at 1:00 p.m. You can either scan the QR code or I'm putting the link in the chat. You can click on there, and we will look forward to seeing you then. So thanks again to our august panel. Really appreciate it. I've learned a lot, and I hope that everybody else has too. Thanks again.
We off the air?
No, we're still on. I don't.
There's Hey, Jonathan, are you able to share that deck?
I'll send it to you.
All right, thanks. It's great. I mean, we'll obviously give credit if we use anything.
For sure.
So do we need to hang on here or for some after wrap, or are we free to go? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
give me one more sec.
Okay.
Well, there was
Okay.
a lot of
Sorry about
downloading
that.
happening.
Yeah, I've never quite mastered the how do you end the webinar part. So I was going through one by one and uninviting people, which may not be the best of customer experience, but it did work. So
I mean-
thanks very much. I was ruder today than I think I've ever been in terms of sending messages. Hey, could it be a little shorter kind of thing? But we had so much to try to get through. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I thought there was awesome information.
Good. No,
Thank
thanks
you,
for having
guys.
us.
Thank you.
It was great. So, yeah, I mean, even if you just end the webinar, it will continue to download and record. You don't have to wait till everybody leaves the room, as far as I know.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you that. Yeah, no, I could have just ended it, but wanted to thank you guys in person. But I will now have to figure out how I can cut this from the end of the recording. So anyway,
No problem. Are you going to post this somewhere?
yeah, we will.
Okay.
We will post this. It'll be on something called Postal Pro that you can do it. I'll send it, and there will be an email going out to everybody with the recording.
Great. Thank you very much. All right,
Thank you.
guys. Thank you for a good chat. I'll see you guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
See you over
Thanks.
there.
Bye-bye.